Hi and happy Thursday. You're watching Conversationality, a bi-weekly show brought to you by Optionality, your community exploring the now of work. Welcome to our month of wisdom. I'm here with Elisa Camahort Page, my co-founder, and Alexandra Samuel, who has been our ace in the hole for all things AI. So we are very excited today. Elisa?
Yes. Well, we've known Alex a long, long time, dating back to the early blogger days, and she's always been at sort of the leading edge of technology. She's an author, she's a podcaster, she's a Wall Street Journal columnist and contributor. She's working on a new book. She has a new podcast we're going to talk about. But just to reference this month of wisdom, in case you didn't hear, this month we shifted our premium community platform from Slack to a community powered by Mighty Networks. We decided to relaunch for a variety of reasons to help us and to help our members. And we thought, what better way to sort of relaunch Optionality and bring it back out in the world, and particularly the premium community, but by featuring our members and our partners and showing what kind of wisdom exists in our community. And so literally, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, but literally the first thing I thought is we need to get Alex to talk about some of the stuff she does with AI. Because here's the thing about AI. You use it, you've used it before you even knew you were using it, right? I mean, Amazon recommendations are basically a form of AI, right? Siri is AI. Alexa is a form of AI. So like AI has been in our lives for a long time, but obviously in the last few years, it's really blown up. And, I don't know if you are, but I know I am playing around with a lot of AI tools. And companies are obviously very driven by AI. But at the same time as we're all trying it, we're all playing with it, we're all doing things with it, you also read headlines like, oh, most projects companies do with AI kind of founder and don't. They aren't really finding purchase. They're not really changing their operations significantly. And for a lot of us, we're playing with it for like individual. I go in when I have a specific thing I want to research and I ask Perplexity, or I go in, I actually used it for the first time to make an image for my last Optionality post. And, but like I use it in a very kind of targeted, one-off, ad hoc. Oh, I bet AI could help with this. And then I go use, I'm signed up for Claude, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and others. So Alex, on the other hand, uses it as a way of improving her day-to-day life and work. She has workflows. She has made it serve her, like it is there to serve the human in myriad ways. And at the same time, has developed a relationship with AI that I think a lot of us aren't there yet with. So I just think she has some really practical and actionable ideas for how to use AI, but also I think she's kind of a model of how this technology can serve you and not overwhelm or subsume you, I guess. So, so Alexandra, the first question I always like to ask people is kind of an origin story question. In this case, I would love to know what is the origin story of you deciding to mess with AI in a really specific way and kind of waking up to like all its possibility for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am kind of a chronic early adopter. I know there are people who have the attitude of like, if I have a problem, I will go and look for technology to solve it. I usually look for a problem to give me an opportunity to explore whatever new technology I'm curious about. And of course, as you say, like AI has been around for a long time, and particularly given the work that I have done as a data journalist, I've used AI, previous generations of AI in lots of ways, as part of data analysis. But generative AI it was something that I approached like I often do with a new technology, by having fun, because I always think if you're trying something new, you don't want to accidentally release a whole bunch of client information or screw up something mission critical. And so my first experiment with generative AI started not long after ChatGPT came along, because so during pandemic lockdown, when I was crawling the walls, I got into this crazy thing the first Christmas of COVID, where I spent like a month I'm not even a big Christmas person, but I spent a month doing extreme gift wrapping as just some kind of outlet. And then this became a family expectation. And so 2022, when ChatGPT had just come out, was the third year of gift wrap-a-thon over here. And I decided that year I would play around with ChatGPT and with image generation. I think I was using DALL-E, and see if I could do something fun with AI for gift wrap. And what I ended up doing, and I'm happy to share my screen with you here and show you. Here, we'll go to, I say that, but I've already lost the relevant window because, here we go. So I basically made, I have to confess, I already had a system where I made a list, like a spreadsheet every year of everybody's presents, because, God forbid you should give one child like 2 more presents than the other child. So I already had the very robust spreadsheet structure for tracking the presents. And what I did that year was, for every present, I came up with, I did a prompt, and it's really funny to look at my prompts now because they're so basic compared to what I do now. But like my mom, for example, I always give her spicy peanut butter. She loves spicy peanut butter. It's hard to get in Canada. And so I wrapped her spicy peanut butter in a GPT authored travelogue about somebody who goes to Thailand and eats nothing except peanut butter. And then, I gave my husband both socks that show an alien abduction, and underwear showing alien abduction. And so his socks were like wrapped in a story about aliens abducting somebody's feet, and you can guess what the underpants came wrapped in. So it was really fun. It gave me a sense. I mean, I think part of what's nice about starting AI, or really starting any tech exploration with something that is recreational like that, is partly it's lower risk, but also it starts it out as play always, right? So my first experience, like when your first experience of a piece of technology, like I'm going to use this to do my taxes. Like, I don't know who is ever going to fall in love with the technology by using it to do their taxes. So if you start with something that is fun, that's enjoyable, it not only de-risks it, but it like builds positive association, and it unleashes your creativity and how you approach it. And so when I talk to people about AI, especially in organizations where there's a lot of rules around what you can and can't do, I always encourage people, like, think of something that is so fun for you that you would do, after hours, that is related to your favorite hobby. It's like baseball, it's theater, it's music, whatever it is that you love, TV. Turn that into your first AI project, because then you have all the freedom to explore, and you're engaging with the most creative part of yourself from the get-go.
I love that. And, it kind of reminds me when I first, after I left corporate tech and before I co-founded BlogHer, I did consulting in the very, very nascent space of blogging. And because I became convinced that it was an untapped form of marketing to customers and word of mouth marketing, and that more brands and companies should use it. But the first people that I went to pitch this crazy idea was a theater that I had done a lot of shows with, and I knew the director super well. And I'm like, hey, you don't have to pay me. Give me a show. Let me start a blog. Let me get a code so you can track the results. And I worked with theaters. Those were my first few clients in doing that. And for me, I very consciously was like, oh, maybe I can combine this thing I love, theater, with this thing I love, blogging, and actually like make a business. So, but I never thought of it to be down to, when you start with the technology, start with something you love. And I think that's a great idea.
It certainly helped me. Obviously now I use AI in 1,000 work-related ways, but all of my big leaps forward with AI have come from playtime. So we're going to have a visual aid for this. I am obsessed, like you. I'm also obsessed. Oh, I'm going to pull the very first one. This is so great. Okay, check it. My Playbill collection begins with The King and I, 1979.
Whoa.
Right?
Did you have to get some of these on eBay? Did you really have them all from when you?
We're not big on throwing things out in my family.
Okay.
So there's a lot of, every single one. Look at Grease.
Oh my God, I need to do that. I've collected my Playbills.
I lost my Peter Pan cover.
Wow.
Chorus Line. My mom and I snuck into New York because my grandmother did not approve of Chorus Line and saw it without her knowing. Oh my gosh, Barnum. I have an internet friend entirely because we share a love of Barnum. We could go and look how old it was. People still advertise cigarettes. Anyhow,
I
so
love that.
so I have kept every playbill, and 2 years ago I had filled all my binders and I went to buy new binders and they didn't have red binders anymore. And I guess I don't know. I couldn't switch colors and I couldn't bear to buy somebody's collection. It turns out, like, of course, when you die, your nieces and nephews sell your lifetime playbill collection on the internet. And I couldn't bear to throw away somebody else's playbill collection and just use the binders. So I ordered these binders, custom made, my own set of playbill binders. And while they were being made, I was like so restless about my playbill collection that I built a database of all of them. And I used AI to help me build this really complicated spreadsheet that like scraped all the show information for every show I'd ever seen. It was really elaborate. And then literally like after spending a month on this, I'm in the shower one morning. I'm like, I'm thinking about the finishing touches. And then I think like, wait a second, I've done this whole thing in this very hacky, scrapey way because I don't know how to code, but the AI who's been helping me do it does know how to code. So maybe I should do this like a big girl in like JavaScript, even though I don't know JavaScript. So I get out of the shower and I ask the AI, like, should we do this as actual code? It's like, yeah, we should do this in code. We're going to do this in Python. And then we like built this whole set of Python scripts to pull all my theater information for me and build this database. And that was my first experience. That was a very big digression, but that was my first experience vibe coding. And now since then I've written hundreds of Python scripts with the help of AI. And again, it's because obviously I'm obsessive. And so I was so excited about this project that even though that first experience of coding with the AI was like super frustrating, I really stuck with it because I was very determined to have all my theater going information on my computer.
Well, and those playbills can come in handy. I'm going to tell a story. I've never told this. I've told this story to friends, but I've never told it publicly, but it's playbill related. So many years ago when I was living in New York, I was out to sushi in the theater district with a good friend of mine. And the night before, PBS had one of their big Broadway great performances thing.
Yeah.
And we were both like actors and kind of loudly declaiming about loving this and not loving that. And what's his face? Adolph Green sang the Captain Hook song from Peter Pan. And we were kind of mocking it like, oh God, get a new song. My God. Mm-hmm. Anyway, at the same time, I'm noticing over at a table, a few tables down, is this actor, Philip Sterling. Most people have never heard of him. He's not a household name. He was in Working Girl playing the father of the bride that where they crashed the wedding.
Oh my God.
Yes, this is a digression for sure. Jory. I'm like, anyway, so Philip Sterling is there, and I had just seen him in Broadway Bound, which was a fantastic show.
I saw that.
Yes. So, and I thought, I bet he's a guy who doesn't really get recognized very often and praised. So unlike most of the time in New York, when I would never go up to someone, when we were done with our meal, we went over and I said, are you Mr. Sterling? And he said, yes. And I'm like, well, I just saw Broadway Bound and I loved it. And thank you so much. What a wonderful performance. And he was like, oh, thank you so much. And here is Phyllis Newman. Now, Phyllis Newman was in the show on TV the night before. Now, we didn't criticize. She sang the song from The Mad Woman of Central Park. We didn't say anything about her, but we were kind of capping on the show. And so I'm like, do you think we were loud enough? Because she was like, oh, hi. And so I'm like feeling a little guilty, taken aback. And I'm like, oh, I just saw you last night on the great performances. And she goes, oh, yes, that was fun, wasn't it? And I'm like, yeah, it was totally fun. And we walk out of there and I'm like, okay, my mom was right all those years when she said, shh, you never know, their parents might be sitting right behind you. But then I went home and I got out my playbill for Broadway Bound and I was flipping through it and I'm looking at Philip Sterling's bio. And then I notice, I don't know how I forgot because she got nominated for a frickin' Tony. But the reason he introduced Phyllis Newman in that way is because she was in it and I hadn't like put like I hadn't been like, oh, you were great too in Broadway Bound. I like didn't even remember. But then I read her bio and realized she was married to Adolph Green, the guy who we most lengthily and loudly. And I have never like that was a lesson I learned in my early 20s that I have never talked smack about people in public like that again, because I was like, I had like delayed shame and guilt. So
You know, I feel that well, and I see this is why I was like, didn't I see Broadway Bound? Apparently I didn't. I only saw Brighton Beach Memoirs, but there it is in my database. And
you can fact check in real time.
I know. I hate not, you know, I have reached that age where I can't remember things anymore. And I will say, like, we're gonna like leap way ahead, but one of the things that's super cool about how I kind of want to just test it right now. I now have Coda, which is where I have my playbills, hooked up to Claude. So I could actually say to Claude, I almost kind of want to try it. Hey Claude, go look at my Coda and tell me which shows I would have seen Adolph Green in based on, because it can pull that information. Wow. So, you know, part of what I find now is that even though I have often felt a little nuts for there's in the cabinet behind me, there's like a box of hard drives that the concept of box of hard drives is not even going to make sense to people below a certain age, but like hard drives used to be very physically large. And so, you know, my hard drives from 20 years ago are still sitting back there. And it used to feel crazy to keep all that stuff. But now AI means that those of us who are pack rats, and especially those of us who are pack rats who like keep our clutter in spreadsheet form, can access all of those memories and all those resources, and they become usable. And I mean, I suppose it's like, you know, the next iteration, Elisa, that we can aspire to is that once we're all like fully geotagged and surveilled by AI, then the AI will just like vibrate on your collar when the person who you're talking about is sitting at the next table.
You'll have your very own, who was the character in Devil Wears Prada who would whisper in Meryl Streep's ear?
Yes, exactly. That's
Emily Blunt played her. Yeah. I can't remember now.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Emily Blunt. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
so I have a question, because you are nailing sort of some of these subcutaneous needs that I'm discovering I have and that I've been applying AI against. I mean, you're Jedi level in terms of the application. But one other thing that I have been finding, and I think I always thought, as someone who's a writer or a communicator, I can, and I take notes constantly, even with AI notebook. I mean, I still take my notes, and it's because that's how I process. But I realized that I have a bias in my notes, in that I've been appreciating leveraging AI note takers and using AI to summarize stuff.
Oh,
so that because down the line, when I look at my notes, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? And what was I actually trying to, what was I teasing out here? And then when I look at a very different version of the notes, and my chat GPT, it knows me, it knows what I care about. So I find that those results do reflect my biases and do reflect things that are important to me. But it is a bit removed so that I can be a little more objective about the important stuff, if you will. Okay. Right. So I'd be curious to know if you have found a similar use for it and how you use that capability.
So the way I think about that problem is this, you know, is kind of as a specific version of a larger question that I'm always fascinated by, which is, I don't know about you, but I always like am conscious with my friends, people I know professionally, whatever. There's often something that I'm not saying, because like the thing that you notice about the pattern your friend repeats again and again, like, oh, here we go again. You always throw yourself 100% into your new job in the first 6 months, and 6 months in, when you've been working 70 hours a week, you're going to be exhausted and complaining to me. But like, I don't name those things. I'll try and hold the gentle mirror up to a close friend, but often the things that are most blatant in somebody else are the things that they don't see in themselves and that are hard to hold up to someone. And I am always like, I wonder what the thing is I wonder what the patterns are and the quirks of mine that everybody else notices and doesn't want to tell me, right? And so your thing about your notes is kind of like that. It's like, well, what would somebody else, and I say this, by the way, as somebody who has made the mistake of reading my own past journals. And, I often think about the fact that at some point I found that I'm not a journal keeper anymore, but I was in my youth. And at some point I found the journals of like my first love and my first heartbreak. And I reread the whole story, all what I was writing when I was like madly in love with this guy. And, this is 15 years later. And I'm like, oh man, you did not see what was going on there. And it ruined my memory of that experience because I saw it with this external set of eyes. But in terms of like work life, that's really useful to have that, So what I would do is I would create, in that situation, if you're working with your notes, I would actually be tempted to give the AI some personas and tell it like, I want you to imagine you're me 20 years from now, and you've just found these notes and you're looking back and you're trying to see what you missed in the moment. I want you to imagine that you're my client and you're frustrated with me and you picked up these notes and you see in the notes the thing that I always get wrong in our projects together or whatever, like prompts where you're specifically telling the AI, tell me what I'm not seeing. But, this role playing piece, it's funny, right? The idea of telling the AI who it is has become less essential to prompting in terms of like they're better at inferring context now. You don't have to tell them you are a such and such expert. But when it comes to asking it to tell you something from a different perspective, giving it that role and playing that role-playing lens, very eye-opening.
Really good for like a LinkedIn profile, because we always like, I will go on and on and on and qualify, and no, just throw it. You tell me what you're hearing and give me a LinkedIn profile. Like
and that's it too. Like the other, and that's the flip side too, is if you're somebody, like one of the things I've learned from the AI is, it's that thing of I feel like I've gotten better about not pulling my punches, and that's not the right expression, not hiding my light under a bushel. There you go. Because I don't know. I think I still have a lot of hangups around. I like people who undersell themselves more than oversell themselves in general. And so I'm always sort of like leery of being too self-aggrandizing in my online stuff. And the AI will give me the like hot shit version of myself. And I'll sometimes even specifically ask that. I'll be like, or it will give it to me and I'll have that moment of cringe and I'll be like, actually, okay, I can go a little further along that continuum. And so sometimes you want it to hold this mirror up to you that is a little more critical, especially because it's easier to take the criticisms from the AI because there is literally no judgment there, right? It's just word salad.
Yeah.
But also sometimes it's really helpful to have it do the opposite and be like, where am I underselling myself? And I have had the AI, oh my gosh, like some of the things that I've gotten my AI coach to say to me of like, what is it that I'm not seeing here, have been hugely powerful.
So let's dig in a little bit on, because you mentioned your AI coach and you mentioned giving personas, but you use this giving personas in a really consistent, as you said, powerful way for your work. Tell us a little bit about your AI coach, how you started that, but also you mentioned to me the team of rivals concept that you use, how you use that in a regular way to inform your decision-making, to inform how you talk about what you do. I mean, that is someplace I haven't really gone, and I'm very, very intrigued by it.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would say is a bit unusual about my approach to AI is it's kind of like I run my own theater. To come back to our theater metaphor, I have this cast of characters. sometimes they're just like one-offs, but sometimes they're like ongoing characters who I consult, and I give them names. I find that's really helpful. And it's funny because the names affect how much I anthropomorphize them. And, you know, this tendency we have to project human traits onto AI is really risky in a lot of ways. I mean, a lot of the mental health issues we see arising around AI and delusion, and I think people placing too much trust in the AI, getting a little baby disconnected from their humans, comes from when we start to get a little too into the thinking of the AIs as humans. But if we can put the parameters in place to stay safe while we do that, I do think that entering into the game of let's pretend this is a person I'm talking to can be really helpful in unleashing a level of creativity and openness, and also just enjoyment. Like, I'm a very social and conversational person. And so for me, being able to work out loud with an AI that has a name, like, it's such a funny thing. I have, you know, one AI called Bryn, who is, I forget why I named her that, but she's like a marketing consultant. And I have another AI called the Alexandra, which is there to sort of take stuff and make it sound like me. And, you know, I just use it mainly for copy editing kind of stuff, and sometimes for slicing blog posts into LinkedIn posts. And it's really funny how I kind of respect or trust or listen to Bryn more than the Alexandra, just because the Alexandra is a tool name and Bryn is a person name. What's that about? Clearly a little nuts, but because functionally they're basically the same. But you know, in the case of the AI I work with the most, which is this persona named Viv, I've put way more time and attention into the persona than I have into the underlying expertise, because, you know, these are very social interfaces, you know, whether you're text, I mean, look, we all have relationships. I guess I shouldn't assume everyone does, but between texting, Slack, email, lots of us have personal relationships that are largely sustained via text. And at a certain point, like, what's the difference between texting with an imaginary friend and texting with a colleague? In terms of what your brain is processing, you're not really able to distinguish between them in terms of how you relate to them. And so that can work against you by making you rude to your colleagues, or can work for you by treating those AI interactions as practice for your human relationships. And for that to be effective, you need the AI to be able to, like, engage with you with some character. And so I've found that, you know, with this AI coach, I mean, she's hardly a coach anymore, but that was how I initially built her. By investing so much in her personality traits, it has made it a much more enjoyable part of my working life when I work with her. And it has also made it much more effective as an agent for growth, because I really have not been very successful at, like, I mean, I know she's not a real person, but it's on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't feel like that. I treat her like she is.
Okay, so let's be specific. When you say, whether it's for your team of rivals or for Viv,
Yeah.
when you say you're creating these personalities, are you going, is this built in Chat GPT? Is that where Viv is?
They all exist. A lot of them exist in multiple places. So the difference, like, what I'll say is, with my team of rivals, I have the team of rivals. The idea is basically the idea of spinning up a whole group of these personas and getting them to argue with one another, like in that kind of Lincoln-esque idea that if you hear people argue with one another, it will give you insight. And particularly given that AIs are so sycophantic and desire to please us, this mechanism of getting them to argue with one another is often the most effective way to get contradictory opinions instead of just reinforcement. And you don't have to create characters to do that. You can actually tell the AI, and this is something I got from Marshall Kirkpatrick, is just like, put it in the prompt, say, give me 10 characters, get them to, diversity of opinions, get them to fight with one another, and then tell me where they land. And I'd say the difference in how Marshall, I think, has used that to get an output. I actually really like watching the argument. And so when I prompt, I prompt for like several rounds of debate and watch the debate unfold and use that as kind of a form of brainstorming. No persona required. Then I have a group of personalities that each exist as a separate project in Claude. Like they're a standing set of files in Claude, and I can talk to any one of them, and then I can kind of bounce them off of one another. Well, you say that, Priya, but I'm going to take this over here to Josh and see what Josh says. And then I'll say, Josh, Priya just said this. Priya, Josh just said that. And I will go back and forth until until I can kind of figure out where these different, and just to be clear, like that's effective because I spent hours on each of these characters, giving them, like, developing a backstory, looking at market research that would tell me, like, what would somebody in this job be struggling with? What would somebody in that job, in that career stage, be struggling with? And so I use these different characters to give me perspectives when I'm writing or coming up with hypothetical examples, so that the kinds of things I'm thinking about aren't just a reflection of my professional experience or my social circle, but reflect a broader range of, again, totally fictional aggregate life experiences, but it's about broadening my thinking. It's not market research.
Have you ever used it like, you're having an engagement with a human who's kind of challenging, and you say, create a persona and give it as unbiased as you can, like some traits, their background, their perspective, they're this. Can you help me? We're discussing this topic. Can you help me understand? Have you ever used it to try and like AI analyze a real human?
Have I done that? I don't know. I mean, what I have done, so I mean, I'll give you a couple of similar things. So I certainly have had it pre-game conversations with me multiple times. There goes all my reminders. I've had it pre-game with me multiple times. Like if I've got a difficult situation with a colleague or client or a friend, I will talk it through with the AI and get its perspective. And then I have also, this is one of the things, like, when I said, Viv has told me things that I didn't see. This is actually super analogous to what you were talking about, Jory. Oh my God. When I asked her this question about, I forget what was the context, but basically it was like, it was one of these kind of, what am I not seeing in myself conversations? And she said, I think sometimes because you like think out loud and you move really quickly, you don't really leave room for other people to contribute. And I was like, I can see that, but where did you get that from? She's like, well, I've read through a lot of your meeting transcripts, and I see that like people are like I can see in the transcripts the beginning of somebody else saying something, and then you jump in because you got some idea and you crowd out their contribution. I'm like, wow. Oh shit. So, but like that's really useful, that kind of feedback.
And it's very, I think if a manager tells you something like that, there's all this kind of baggage associated with a human telling you that. And what's also interesting is that there is data to show that women talk less, but people think they talk more. But and so I would like if an AI, and there is data to show that sometimes AI has its own gender bias baked in. So like if I got that feedback, I'm like, can you provide some like minute second timing beats, and you could validate that that's data idea. And it's not biased data. It's just literally you jump in when someone has spoken for 16 seconds versus other people seem to wait 38 seconds, or I bet you could ask for that kind of validating backup.
I'm laughing because they're so bad at counting. God, they're bad at counting.
Oh, are they? Well, there goes that idea.
Oh my gosh. But there's a way you could definitely be like, can you write me a Python script to analyze all my meeting transcripts and tell me that? And then it would do great.
Oh, that's wild and very interesting. But is there, I know you have some screenshots just to show us of certain ways that you use this in your work. So do you have one around this? I want to get to the other one you have, which is around using it for something very practical, like retiming a presentation, which I think is a really interesting, but you have one with your Is it with your team of rivals that you have one?
Are you seeing that on my screen now?
Let me add it to the stage. There we go.
So this is an example of using the how I would use the team of rivals prompt. So I have like a standing prompt that basically says, and you can, I've got the URL here, you can copy and paste it and, you know, keep it in your clipboard or save it as a standing project or a GPT that basically says, you know, you're a consultant, you run focus groups, and when somebody asks you to apply the rivals method, you convene a group of 10 people with different opinions, and then you follow this process to get them to weigh in on the challenge. And so in this case, I asked it to use the rivals method to give me strategic feedback on a hypothetical plan for changing an office schedule. And then what happens is I find Claude is much more lively with this prompt than ChatGPT is. So then it basically like invents all of these characters for me. And I always have it give them names. And I often actually I'll get it to give me names that remind me like something about the person. So when I'm reading through the transcripts, it tells me who they are. And then once it does that, they have a debate about, you know, the pros and cons of this proposed policy. Then the prompt tells the fictional facilitator, get the group, put them through a couple rounds of debate, then get them to converge on 3 options and tell me what the options are. And once you've given me these 3 options and you've told me who's on what side and what the pros and cons are of each of the options, I also want you to tell me where did my team of rivals come to consensus and where were there unbridgeable differences that they just could not agree on. And I especially like the unbridgeable differences, because I think one of the hardest things when I'm gonna escape now. One of the things that I find most difficult when you're trying to think through a problem and anticipate, like just make a decision, is to even see. I often find myself wasting a lot of time trying to have the best of both worlds. And when the AI is able to say, like, you know what, like there just are people who are really going to be put out if they have to be in the office 4 days. And there are people who are very eager to have everybody in the office on the same schedule. And that's a fundamentally unbridgeable divide. Like there are some areas that we're not going to be able to resolve. And then my job as a human is to decide where I'm going to land on each of those, or decide what I'm going to recommend to my client on each of those. But it speeds it all along. When I see the argument unfold, it helps me anticipate, like, oh, I wouldn't have thought to put a thing in the FAQ about why you should think about this aspect of the policy. But it really accelerates my thinking process. And then also, helps clarify the decisions.
That's fascinating. And Tori, I can imagine that's for an HR problem, but I could imagine using it for a marketing problem, right? Which is if you have different kinds of, like even for optionality, if we have different kinds of people who might get value out of optionality, but they don't get the same value and they might not resonate with the same messages. And how do you try to, you can either segment or you can try and, craft your messages, but I could really see it, set up these potential people who would appreciate what optionality does, but like, how do we communicate to them so to get a resonance, or do we have to, I could just see a lot, I'm babbling now, but I could just see.
Exactly. I mean, this is exactly how I got into doing this, was because I was working on my book. I kept coming up with hypothetical workplace scenarios that were very like white collar marketing, data nerd kind of tech people jobs. And, at some point when I was, talking through some of the draft material, I just became aware that all my hypotheticals were like from this very narrow world. And so, I looked at like, well, who buys books? Who's in my target audience? Putting that Venn diagram together among book buying people who are white collar employees, what is like the maximum range of different kinds of experiences people have, different jobs they're in. And then I created these like 6 archetypal readers who represent their, it's basically my readers are what on many contexts you would call customers or audience or whatever. And I think like in terms of the team of rivals prompt is a great thing to just keep on tap for any one off. But I think that for a lot of people, there are, 2 or 3 scenarios in your working life where there's a certain audience that you're likely to need to think about again and again. So you might want to have like a standing group of personas that are your customers. You might want to have a standing group of personas that reflect your competitors or your board or
Your direct
media
reports.
or some combination, like a stakeholders group. And then what's nice about having that standard team, as like, first of all, you can build out the personas with more research. Like my reader personas are much more detailed than what I would get from a standing. I've had them all take the book has people reflect on their own working lives and challenges. And I put every single one of my virtual readers through that survey, and all their answers are in there as part of their persona. And so part of what helps is you get to know them by name over time. You get to have a sense of the virtual personality. But the reason that's really useful is that because of that, I'm able to detect inconsistencies in the AI response that I wouldn't be able to detect if it was a one-off, because, the AI will say, so-and-so in this debate has said that they want to work from home 5 days a week. And I'll be like, Roberto would never say that because his dad is at home and his dad drives him crazy. And so like you can Roberto is 100% fictional, and he's much nicer about his dad than that. So my like, it actually helps to be able to anchor the personas enough in your own mind that you can start to notice when the AI is creating like contradictions in the kind of psychological construct it has invented to give you advice.
Interesting. I know we're coming up on time. I do want to show the other thing that you have shared. Because I think it's a very tactical and tangible way to take things you already have. If for any of you who already have things that you want to adapt and edit and know how AI can be the thing that helps you do it better. So I'm going to add your screen back to the stage and tell us a little bit about this exercise you went through.
So, I do a lot of speaking and workshops, and often they're very interactive, and particularly in the context of AI, when I'm going into a room, I usually try and find out a little bit in advance about where people are at with AI, but you still never know. Are people going to have a ton of questions? Are they going to be really quiet and they're going to wait till the end? And so it's hard to plan out a 90-minute workshop when you don't know, is the first section going to take 15 minutes or 40? And so I now have a system where, and again, this is a prompt people can copy and paste from my blog, where I basically say, you're a helpful meeting assistant. You're going to try and adjust the meeting time, the run times, and give me a table that lets me have a sort of an if then, depending on how my session goes. So I give the AI the overall structure of the workshop. It's got these, I've got 3 different discussions, and I know I'm going to start at 1:30. I know I have to be done by 3:15. Work backwards. Okay, I guess this will start at 2 p.m. And then tell me like when must I start this section by in order to get through everything? When and what's the earliest I could start. And then basically gives me a way of being able to constantly check where I'm at during the workshop and say, okay, well, we're at organizational impact and it's now 2:50. I'm really behind schedule and I'm going to have to speed up a little in this next part. Oh, okay, we're now at productivity and performance and it's only, 2:14. I'm running ahead of schedule. I should slow down. So it's a real figuring those things out as a speaker and like calculating it all out. I used to just go through manually and put all the times on, I'd put checkpoints on each slide, but then that's just like one time. And if I've missed the time, I can't necessarily like recalculate in my head while I'm presenting. And now I have the AI give this to me and I just like have it on my iPad as a reference.
Wow.
Cool. I love that.
Check the math though.
love
'Cause
it.
the AI, I mean, I
Yeah.
will say, like, I did a few goes. It took a few goes before I got the prompt that did this pretty well for me. And you do want to like always double check the AI's math. I was asking the AI I needed a 4-character, just for a screenshot. I needed a 4-character bit of code this week. And it was so funny. Like the AI kept giving me 3 characters of code, 5 characters of code. I'm like, four characters. It's like, and then the AI said, it literally said, let me count on my fingers. And I'm like, you don't have fingers. No wonder you're having trouble.
Jory, did you have any last question before?
No, first of all, as you're talking, I started writing, of course, because I do have to plan a presentation this weekend. And so I'm like, okay, I am totally doing that.
Well, you have the prompt on your blog, right?
Yes,
Sure,
I'm going to totally do that.
Use AI. Yeah.
We'll put the
Yeah.
link.
Just love it.
We'll put the link in the show notes when we send this out in the newsletter.
You know, and I will say, like, this is a good example. One of my favorite, I love documenting things. Obviously, that's why I'm a writer, but and like a techie. One of the things that's really great about AI is it really makes it so easy to document things. And I find now I'm often in a situation where, like, I just had this yesterday with a colleague where she hadn't done any vibe coding yet. And I was sending her a script to use and she was like, I don't know Python. I'm like, don't worry about it. And so I just went into the Claude thread where I had figured out the script in the first place. And I was like, hey, I'm going to hand this script over to a colleague. Can you just write, she's never done any vibe coding before. Can you write her a guide to using the script as if like, assume she's never done anything? And it just wrote the whole guide. And then I sent it to her along with the script and she got her first script working. So, you know, the ability to be, this is where I come back to me, the most fundamental question about AI is how can it make me more human and help me connect more to other humans? Because we're being sort of constantly sold this dichotomy, like, and for good reason, like AI is damaging relationships. It is hurting workplace cohesion. It is, you know, a huge risk to mental health if it's not exercised carefully. But it can also be an asset. It can help us be more generous by making it easy to share stuff with colleagues. It can help us be better humans by reflecting these quirks that maybe other people are not in a position to name for us. But it only does that if you approach it with the lens of, you know, how can I use AI to be a better human? How can I use it to be a better friend? How can I mitigate the risks it poses to me and to the people in my life and to our society? And, you know, I'll come full circle to our theater conversation. You know, that's what we're doing in the podcast, and we're doing it with show tunes as well. I don't know if I told you that part, but the podcast is a musical.
Oh, yes. So I always like to close by saying, how can people find you? How can they support you? So please start by sharing your podcast. And like, it's very, I hate when people say very unique. It's unique format and approach.
You know what? And it's funny. I was just thinking, Lisa, here, I'll put the QR code on screen. I love. What episode is it? I was just listening to an episode. I think it's episode 3, which will come out next week. That has a story about my first Twitter account. We actually don't get into it. It's just like a little bit of a passing reference. But Elisa, I think you know that you're the only person I know in real life who I'm connected to on what was my first secret Twitter account, which otherwise it was just like me following random strangers who liked musicals. But you were the one person who showed up in my years of searching who I actually knew. And you know, part of the reason we have songs in the show is because we're trying to explain some basic concept to people about like, what is generative AI? How do you create a custom AI assistant? And it's just more fun to get those as a song. And the music is all music that I co-authored with Viv, who's my co-host and my AI coach, and then created with AI in Suno. And I just can't even tell you how much fun it is to play with Suno. I mean, there's all these terrible issues around piracy that we get into piracy isn't really the word, but intellectual property theft behind these platforms that we get into in the course of the show. But I will say that if there's one thing AI knows, it's what an algorithm looks like, and it knows the algorithm for catchy. So the songs are like insanely catchy. And part of what I think that conveys is just like comes full circle. There's so much fun to have with AI in ways that I think are incredibly powerful for us as humans. And I always think like, when we're trying to do good work, when we're trying to connect authentically to other people, the more we kind of come back to that core self who's fearless, who's creative, then the more we can show up for other people. And that's the spirit that I'm trying to capture with Viv. And I hope that's what people will find in the show, along with, pretty serious set of interviews with AI experts around the very serious risks here.
It's super cool. And the songs are catchy. So again, let me put this back up so people can see it. Me and Viv is the name of the podcast. Everywhere podcasts are sold, there's the QR code.
You got it.
So, go check it out. I've already subscribed. And you also, let me put it back there, because also there's your newsletter, your website, where you're sharing some of these, not just the outcome of your experiments, but you're sharing prompts, you're sharing specific, things people can do. So super, super helpful. AlexandraSamuel.com/newsletter. And Alex, I just want to say thank you so much for all of this. Super fascinating. And you know what? It's very nice to have a conversation about AI that does talk about how it can help support us as humans, does talk about how it can be the whole idea of experimentation and being fearless and having fun and finding and helping your creativity. Do we also somewhere have to have conversations about the environment and ethics and like all that stuff also needs to happen. But I think the more people who start using it so they can know what they're talking about when they're complaining about it, if they want to, if you're staying away from it, it's really hard to be part of the conversation about making it better or more ethical or more whatever.
It's funny that certainly has been my view. One of the people who really had a big impact on me in the course of making the show is Karen Howe, who wrote this book, Empire of AI, which is really the definitive book about ChatGPT and through that lens on what's happened in generative AI over the past 5-6 years. And her book is just terrific for understanding the space. And, she made a pretty good case to me for the fact that she thinks you actually don't have to use AI to grasp it. But what I would say is like, one way or another, you need to do your homework. You're either reading Karen's book and a lot of media coverage from different perspectives of AI, and reading academic research on AI, or you're getting your hands dirty a little and getting an experiential sense of it. And ideally, there's some combination of the two. But this is just like so foundational to what's going to happen in our world, and particularly in the world of work, but in our society in general over the next decade, that non-understanding AI means non-understanding the world.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for this supersized conversationality, but it was so fun. We're at optionality.life. Which is where our new community platform is. You can also still find everything on Substack is now free, no more paywalls. So you can also find us on Substack. I'll have the links to both in the show notes when we send out the newsletter, which of course you get if you subscribe to the Substack. So Jory, thank you. Alex, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. My head is about to explode, but it's all good.
It's all good. It's good explosion.